are reflecting that we have planned to receive income of slightly above 1 billion, being 1059, 124, and we will be receiving it from various sources. The bulk of it will be coming through the department from National Treasury, the MTF. It will be 57% of the overall budget. It will comprise of an allocation towards infrastructure, towards our operational grant, and an additional allocation towards the implementation of EPWP program and biosecurity work. We will also generate 8% of revenue from various external funders that we will mobilize resources from that will help us to implement our mandate. We usually target those funders that are aligned to our mandate. Over and above that, we will generate 18% of our income from operations that we are running through the gardens spread across the country, and it will mainly be from our gate admission fees. We will also have concerts in some of the gardens where it's possible, hire out venues, and also the rental fee that we will receive from our tenants, which is mainly restaurants. On the next slide, we are reflecting how we have allocated to spend the full budget, meaning that we will not, we have not planned for a deficit or a surplus for the financial year. So 42% of the overall budget will go towards remuneration of those that are employed by the organization, and 15%, being 164 million, will go towards the operations, ensuring that the gardens are well maintained in the form of operating expenses. We will then also implement the infrastructure program, the resources that are mobilized in their ring-fenced portfolios, and the EPWP work, which will include Groensebenza, greening and open space management, and the work around clearing of invasives. On the next slide, we are reflecting how we are organized in terms of divisions and the allocated spending that will flow through the organization. 44% will be going towards our National Botanical Gardens, which are in 11 centers, and 17% will be going towards the Zoological Gardens in 2 centers, and 21% in the Science and Policy Advice area. The remainder will be in the administration, 13%, and 5% is for the entire organization. It's areas where it cannot be allocated to one specific area, covering issues such as your internal and external audits, insurance, and other HR related costs like your staff training. And it should also be noted that from this reflection, 82% of our budget will be going towards core areas. On the next slide, we are reflecting the program spending, showing a clear relationship between the allocation of funds and the APP as has just been presented by the CEO. The bulk of the allocation will be going towards the gardens, being 45%, and administration 19%, program 3 HCD 15%, and program 2 21%. The next slide, I think we are then having our acronyms that we've utilized throughout the presentation. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, CEO.
Honorable Chair, that's our submission, Honorable Minister, and the chairpersons and colleagues.
Thank you very much, Mr. CEO. Honorable members, that is the presentation of the South African National Biodiversity Institute. Can we take hands to start with Honorable Winkler, Honorable Paulsen, followed by Honorable Bryant, in that order.
Thank you, Chair. And please indulge me for switching off my camera. The network is very unstable here. So I have a question relating to the white paper on sustainable use and how this exactly interacts with the game meat strategy, and also the white paper on sustainable use and the recommendations of the high-level panel, which called for the phasing out of the captive line industry. I know that there's been a call by the department for stakeholders to participate in discussing a voluntary exit strategies. But what is going to happen with those owners in the industry who, for example, do not want to voluntarily exit? And how does this all interact with the white paper? Thank you.
Honorable Paulsen.
Good morning, and thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, I only have one question. It's with regards to alien invasive species, which, especially on terrestrial water bodies and rivers, that lead to an increase in water loss through transpiration and evaporation, and reducing the water runoff of rivers. So I'd like to know this responsibility to clear this invasive species, what has been budgeted for it, and what long-term solution is there for the alien invasive species? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Honorable Bryant.
Thanks very much, Chairperson. I've got one or two questions, but I'm just going to start with this one. Chairperson, the Botanical Society has been working with South African gardens for over 120 years. And as part of the Botanical Society membership, free entry has been granted to those members to South African gardens. And one of those in particular, Kirstenbosch Garden, has many active Botanical Society members who are able to have free access due to their membership of the Botanical Society. And furthermore, lifetime memberships, which cost in excess of thousands of rands, which many people have invested in to ensure that they have access to those gardens for the rest of their lives. We've been informed that SANBI has taken the decision to cancel those memberships. They have provided existing members an opportunity to effectively extend their membership by 1 year. And I think the cutoff date was the end of March. But after that, those memberships will no longer qualify those members to have free access to the garden, which is going to drive down, firstly, the number of Botanical Society members, because many of those members sign up with the expectation that they will receive that free guest access. All they will receive now is a 10% discount. But secondly, we now have people with lifetime memberships who are very confused as to the way forward. people who have invested thousands of rands in these memberships with the expectation that they will have free access in perpetuity, who are now in the dark as to the way forward. So, I would like to know from SANBI why this decision was taken. Your revenue, you've said that you have now exceeded your target of 1.2 million. You're sitting on 1.32 million visitors. So you're certainly not short in terms of the number of people coming through the gate. Why have you taken a decision that effectively has disillusioned many traditional visitors to these gardens, and effectively broken that trust between yourselves, the Botanical Society, and those members? Do you have a plan to reimburse the people who have had memberships up until now, who will no longer get that access, and lifetime members? What is the way forward? And primarily, why was this decision taken?
Thank you very much, Honorable Bryant. Are there further takers, honorable members? Okay, just on my side, SANBI, are you able to please clarify the scientific authority that is established? It is a permanent structure that transcends government administration, or is it appointed by a minister for a particular tenure? What are the key scientific studies that the scientific authority is seized with, and or what are the programs that are they really busy with right now? I can see that the scientific publications have been one of the key performance indicators of SANBI, and it's probably there in other entities. However, I have to ask this question with respect to your Groen Sebenza internship program. Do you monitor the progress of these young black interns who publish with senior scientists from SANBI to see if there's growth and progress over time? Or have we just left them from being mere interns, or do we? What are the methodologies that we're deploying to monitor their growth into full-time scientists? CEO.
Thank you, Honorable Chair, honorable members, Deputy Minister, and chairs of the board, and colleagues. With the first question, I would request if at the end of responding to the other questions, the question by Honorable Winkler on the white paper and the relationship with game meat and the captive lion industry program, the voluntary exit, that if Ms. Kumza Nshanga can from the department can have a reflection on that. Suffice to say that as SANBI, either through the scientific authority or as SANBI, we always play a critical role. We do biodiversity management plans for species. We focus on a number of species, whether it's lion, whether it's elephant, whether it's leopard, whether it's, so depending on which species are, to reflect specifically on whether the survival of the species in the wild is compromised by any activity. That's why we referred to non-detrimental findings that come in. But it doesn't stop us from providing advisory services from a scientific perspective in terms of the trends and analysis that is provided there. So in that regard, if Ms. Nchanga, depending on what she would say, we'll see what to say further to that effect, because the department is facilitating that program. Would agree with Honorable Paulsen. I will ask Kamel, Ms. Bizo, Kamel, to come in on that one. But I would agree that the alien invasive species are regarded as one of the 5 key drivers of biodiversity loss, alongside pollution, alongside issues of land use, land degradation, climate change, and others. So our investment in this space is very, very critical to make sure that we find long-term solutions. Our reflection of the 45 risk analysis, which we do per year, we look at different species that are subjected to, or that create pathways that are concerning, and run that risk analysis, which with which the details thereof will be provided by Kamel. If maybe she can come now, and then I would also request her, and then I will add on, to also reflect on the matter of scientific authority, as the Honorable Chair has indicated. If she can do that. Mr. Elliott will have, I will say something about the Botanical Society and the issues that Honorable Bryant raised, and then I will also affirm a few things that I just need to clarify in that space. When it comes to Umsebenza, I may want to say that we run this program in a methodological way, or in the manner that we have mentors that are assigned to specific intents, to avoid what Honorable Chair was saying. And there is a tracking system and a monitoring program that we're setting up that will be checking on those issues that the Chair had raised to ensure progress, to ensure growth. The first installment of this program had a number of young people finding their space in the sector. Doesn't necessarily have to be with SANBI, but in the sector in its broad terms, provinces, other management authorities, and as such. We also have set up an incubation program where mentors are also trained on how to incubate appropriately to ensure growth. So they are not left hanging and thrown out there. So I would request Kamel now to reflect on alien invasive species, and also to reflect on the scientific authority before we go to the questions that Honorable Bryant raised on Botanical Society. And then we'll go back to Honorable Winkler later on. Kamel?
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Starting with the question around SANBI's role when it comes to invasions, our key responsibility is the monitoring of the impacts of invasives. And this is through our status of biological invasions report that's produced every 3 years. This allows us to monitor the impact and basically identify and detect any new invasions. We have regional programs that are focused on this in the provinces. And as the CEO stated, very key for us is the risk analysis about what are the impacts in terms of the invasions. So building up the capacity to conduct these risk analysis has been a key component of our work. And this is reflected in our annual report in our annual plan in terms of our target around the number of risk analysis conducted. We also are working with our department in terms of a strategy responding to the findings from the biological status report Biological Invasion Status Report, which came out with a number of findings and recommendations. So the development of a strategy is going to allow us to respond to that. With regards to the scientific authority, yes, it's our minister who appoints members onto the Scientific Authority Committee, and that's made up of representatives from each of the provinces and a representative from SANParks. Sandy's role is to provide the administrative and logistical support, the secretarial support for the scientific authority, but also very key is to support the scientific authority through conducting the research and providing the necessary evidence to support Minister in carrying out her decisions, and basically also to inform and to monitor the illegal trade. So many of the studies that are conducted are focused on particular areas where species are threatened due to illegal trade. And a key example for us that we are focusing on at the moment is around the illegal trade in succulents. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much, Kamel, on those two aspects. The issue on Botanical Society, which the Elliot COO would also come in on, is that it's a new system that we have introduced that works on a 90-10 framework in terms of the ratio. 90% payment, 10%, 10% discount to that effect. That is applicable as we are working on the new loyalty membership program that will be run by SANBI. We can't say that it will be similar to what SANParks has, but we are looking at a variety of options. There are third parties that are involved in that. We still maintain the relationship with Botanical Society of South Africa for many programs and strategic reasons, and most of which are aligned to what Botanical Society of South Africa was established. And there will still be joint programs that we will be working on. And we have worked on this up to where we are together. Honorable Bryant, you raised the issue of lifetime members. In the new arrangement that we have agreed with Botanical Society of South Africa that the 450 plus of those lifetime members, and that arrangement will be honored. So there is a that will be honored. The lifetime members will continue in the manner that it was. We have also looked at the issue of volunteers. We have a lot of volunteers that come through from Botanical Society of South Africa, specifically in support of the work in the gardens. Most of the propagation work is done by these volunteers, and these volunteers will still come in free into the gardens to do that work, and we'll work with our teams in the programs that we've agreed upon. We interface with volunteers even beyond horticultural and related matters, but also in the herbarium. They come in numbers. Most of the pressing and what gets into the files to support that foundational science is done through and with or in partnership with volunteers. They will still come free and do that work in that regard, while we work on how the loyalty program will run. So I just needed to indicate those aspects with the changes that have been effected in partnership, in consultation, and we do appreciate and acknowledge the concerns raised, and with the arrangements that we've made with the lifetime members, the volunteers coming in, the 90-10 arrangement, and the loyalty membership model that is coming. and also continuous partnership on programmatic approaches, some of which would be to raise funding for specific aspects and programs that will be done in partnership with the Botanical Society of South Africa. So COO, if there's anything else that I've left out on this aspect, but we remain open, and there is an open channel that we've established to work and continue to work with the Botanical Society of South Africa. COO.
Morning, Chair and honorable members. CE, you have covered everything. I think with your permission, just to add that the relationship of BOTOC members is between BOTOC and their members. So if there is anyone who wants to claim any refunds, they will not claim it from SANBI because they don't have legal obligations with SANBI. They've got legal obligations, contractual obligations with BOTOC. But as the CEO have just mentioned, we will honor the lifetime members, and we have again requested a list of all of them so that we can then transfer them into our database for them to still enjoy that free access. Thank you.
Thank you, COO. I don't know, Honorable Chair, whether we go back to that question by Honorable Winkler, which I requested the DFFA representative, I think, is it Ms. Njanga, to reflect on?
Is Ms. Njanga here?
Morning, Chair and honorable members, and good morning to the chairpersons, CEOs, and colleagues from public entities. In responding to this question, I just wanted to remind honorable members that the department did appear in front of the portfolio committee on the 24th of January and presented comprehensively on issues relating to lions, inclusive of our approach to policy and legislative review, as well as the work that is now currently underway, being managed by the ministerial task team that has been appointed by the minister. So I think the department did present to the portfolio committee a very concise overview of what is being done. But in terms of the linkages and relationship between the white paper, the game meat strategy, as well as work on lions, just to indicate that following the adoption of the white paper by Cabinet 2 weeks ago, which does focus primarily on the 4 goals relating to conservation, sustainable use, access and benefit sharing, as well as transformation. Members would appreciate that a white paper is a broad policy direction and provides a strategic thrust to the rest of the work of the department and the sector in as far as issues relating to biodiversity conservation and sustainable use. So all subsequent work of the department will now be informed by the white paper. And I think members would also recall that in previous engagements with the department, there was indication that the policy position, which would now speak more specifically to issues relating to the 4 species that were considered by the high-level panel, had to be put in abeyance pending the finalization of the white paper. So now that the white paper has been finalized, approved by Cabinet, the department will then proceed with the further development of that policy position. So all matters relating to lions outside of what the current ministerial task team is charged with will then be covered in that policy position. And that also includes our work on the game meat strategy. We also had to put some brakes on that process pending the white paper. So the game meat strategy will now proceed in earnest. And we will also make sure that it's completely and fully aligned to the strategic trust of the white paper. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Honorable Bryant, followed by Honorable Winkler.
Thanks very much, Chairperson, and thank you for the responses in terms of those queries around the membership. I'm pleased to hear that the existing lifetime members at least will get some sort of a reprieve for their long commitment and their close relationship with the garden. Unfortunately, not the same for existing BOTSOC members. But Chair, I heard from the CEO, he mentioned that, this isn't anything to do with SANBI. It must be sorted out between BOTSOC and their members. But that's a bit of a disingenuous comment to make. The cancellation of this agreement came from SANBI's side. It didn't come from BOTSOC's side. It didn't come from the members' side. So whereas there might be an issue with the finances, and the finances are changing hands between the members and BOTSOC, this was a decision that wasn't taken by BOTSOC, and they are the ones who are now going to be left with the issues of having to deal with potential financial fallout. So my question remains, Chair, and this hasn't been answered. I heard something about 90-10 or whatever. I want to know why this decision was taken. What was the reason behind cancelling the existing status quo? What was the problem? What wasn't working? Because as far as I can understand, there was a system in place which was working. It was encouraging membership of the Botanical Society, which was helping to grow their members. It was providing a service, and it wasn't having a massive impact on the revenue of SANBI. So I would like to know from either of the two gents who answered what the reason was behind what was wrong with the existing system that it had to be cancelled and thrown into jeopardy, because it really seems like it's done far more harm than good. And I'd like to have that answer, Chair. Thank you. I also seem to be the only one putting on my camera today.
I just switched mine on what together, Honorable Brian. Honorable Winkler.
Thank you, Chair. So with reference to the response by one of the officials, they had said that the game meat strategy would closely align with the white paper for sustainable use. My question is that how exactly does one trade off the increased call for global conservation mechanisms to protect biodiversity, like, for example, with the Biodiversity Conservation Treaties example, and the fact that now there seems to be a push for a wholesale commodification of wildlife in South Africa via the game meat strategy. So I'm struggling to understand how we mesh these two seemingly opposing principles. And then I have one further question. It's got to do with the recent export of 12 cheetah to India. The CITES permits that were issued, according to the NDF from 2015, that recommended that any export of the species would actually be detrimental. How is it then that this export was approved, considering that the 2021 NDF is only a draft and hadn't gone out for public consultation yet? So on what basis were these 12 cheetahs exported since the 2021 NDF? The process hadn't been concluded yet. Thank you.
CEO.
Thank you very much. I take it that what Honorable Winkler raised, the department may have a reflection on, and I go back to the issue of Botanical Society of South Africa. I still underscore that Sanbi and Botsok are not enemies. We'll continue to work together, as I indicated. The arrangement that we had previously, and even the MOU or the agreement that we have, gets to be reviewed every 2 years. And that review would yield, the review had come into the point of changing the fees model. Hence my reference to the 90-10, and there will still be another review moving into the future. The issue of the lifetime members remaining. Honorable Winkler is asking a question as to what were the gaps and what was the problem. Of course, the context changed over time, but I didn't want to go into the details of the framing of the arrangement in the past of members who will pay to Botsok, and Botsok will keep the money, and they will come and come through free into the gardens, and Botsok would support, I think, 10% or so of what they've collected would then come into Sanbi. They will keep 90%, and then they will decide on which programs to support. Of course, there are a number of programs to support, but they will decide on which program to support, to what figure. We continue to work together. They did a lot also in supporting EPWP programs and the additional workers that came in through that. The program on CREW, which is the custodians of rare and endangered wildlife flowers, and other programs in their own discretion. It was in that form. So when we started working on the new loyalty membership program, it had implications on the current arrangement. Hence, the protracted negotiations back and forth to come to where we are currently, while maintaining the relationship. So the members that volunteer will still continue to volunteer and come in through. There's an arrangement for that. And whatever that we do with them, the lifetime members will still be coming in free. Suffice to say, if I may indicate, every Tuesday is an open day for all senior citizens. They don't pay anything. It's free in our gardens. So there are a lot of opportunities for interfacing with gardens. And we value the relationship that we have with customers, with visitors, with whoever that comes in, and also with partners. We consider those that work with us as volunteers, as partners in the process, and also Botsok as a partner, and will continue to be a partner. But we have this loyalty membership program in development, while we still keep the 90-10. And every 2 years, we'll keep on changing, or not changing, reviewing where we are, what is working, what is not working. We'll make adjustments. And it's a journey that we are not doing with us on this side and them on the other side. We're doing it together. I again want to emphasize that in partnership with Botsok, we've assigned teams to work on joint programs. Some of them will be marketing, commercialization related to support the work in gardens. Some of them will be programmatic related to support specific programs. So we'll continue to do that as partners. So it's in that context that we find ourselves where we are. And I think we have an understanding that this is the model that we want to follow. There may be issues with members, and that both of us would have to work very hard to explain the new arrangement and how best we leverage on the new membership model, a loyalty membership program when it comes, while we also maintain all the other things that I've spoken about in the new relationship. That is to that extent, so that no one is left exposed in whatever form, legal or otherwise, as we move into the future. I may leave it here for now, Chair, just to emphasize there's no known acrimony from our side.
Thank you very much, CEO. Honorable Bryant, is that the legacy end?
No, Chairperson, unfortunately, it's not. If you mind, I just need another follow-up here, if that's possible.
Sure. Sure.
Chair, sorry, I think we're starting to get towards the answer here. I'll try again. So what I've gleaned so far is the reason that the existing membership agreement was cancelled was because there was a level of discretion that BOTSOC had in terms of where they invested that money in terms of projects. And clearly, SANBI didn't trust BOTSOC to invest that property. Otherwise, there wouldn't be an issue with it. That's what I'm getting. So I don't know how then SANBI can say they've got a great working relationship with BOTSOC if they're not trusting them in terms of their discretionary spend. Is that the central issue? Or is there another reason as well? Because I'm still struggling to see what the main reason was and why this was cancelled. I'm still not seeing what the problem was and why the status quo wasn't kept. And you know, the collateral that's followed on from this decision being taken. Sorry, Chair, I really need clarity on this because it doesn't make sense.
CEO.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. If it came through as saying that there is a mistrust, it was not meant to be. There's no mistrust. The reference to the level of discretion was that because we're talking about numbers here, it was to say that the new system, either through the loyalty program model that we're developing, will apply to everyone in the same way. You may not necessarily need to be a member of BOTSOC to be able to participate in the loyalty program, as is something that we are going to continue to work on. Says that I'm not working on and presenting any aspect of numbers here in terms of our analysis and what it means per se. The arrangement that was and the new arrangement that's coming. Of course, there are a lot of dependencies in the process. Hence, the built-in of this 2-year review. So in the review that we have conducted, we then came up to then agree on the 90-10%. The level of trust remains, and the discretionary aspects as it relates to whatever else that will be if the membership process operates the way it was, even within the context of 90-10, will still apply. And BOTSOC is an independent organization. We respect them for that, but we'll work with BOTSOC. And if not, intensify our relationship in a programmatic manner. So that is what it is. So in the response, I can leave it there without going into the details of the figures and that figure and how it works around. But all of it is done to make sure that we continue to provide the services that we need to provide in botanical gardens in the manner that our mandate is. And if at all in the next review, there are certain glaring issues that we'll need to deal with, we'll not pick them up only then at the time of review. As we move along, we'll do that. And it will be an issue that also involves all stakeholders, including BOTSOC. So it's an open system, and we've got an open line to that effect without acrimony. Thank you, Chair.
Honorable Bryant, at the risk of...
Thanks, Chairperson. I don't think I'm going to get the answer that I'm looking for because to be honest with you, I don't think it exists. I just think this was a bad decision. I think it's broken down trust between SANBI and BOTSOC and members, regardless of what's being put forward. It has. I know this because I have spoken to members who are very disillusioned about what's taken place. And I just want to place on record that, you know, we believe this is the wrong decision. And I sincerely hope that it will be reconsidered at some stage going forward. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Bryant. I'm sure if we are to make a follow-up, perhaps we will be able to get a response in writing from the CEO and SANBI in its entirety. Thanks very much, SANBI representatives. The response, I must confess, Mr. CEO, is not really very satisfactory. And Honorable Winkler?
Thank you, Chair. I'm still waiting for a response on the export of the cheetah, as well as the conflicting principles with regard to biodiversity conservation and now commodification. Thank you.
CEO.
I don't want to refer it, as I'm not the chair, to the department in reference to that issue. If we have to have an input, we can also in writing to that effect. But if the department may reflect on that, Chair, with your permission.
Shoni, are you okay?
Chair, could you hear me?
Are you? Yes, I can hear you. I want to see you. Are you okay?
I'm okay, Chair. I was saying that on the questions that Honorable Winkler was asking, I think that's where Ms. Nchanga was responding. So that's why I was saying that with your discretion, Chair, if she can come in on that one in particular.
Yeah, but your answers are not to the best of your ability. The way we know you, you seem to be degenerating. That is why I'm checking if you're okay.
No, I'm okay, Chair. I think on the question that was raised by earlier by Honorable Bryant, if you are referring to that one in particular, there are trade-offs that needed to be made. I'm not presenting here the details of the figures and what it means in comparison and the projections. All of those things were done, and we found that the costs that we have taken in partnership or in consultation with BOTSOC is the best one under the current circumstances. And therefore, as we move forward, whatever will come out of the new model and the review that we'll keep on doing as part of our agreement, we'll make the adjustments as we move along if they are required. But we feel, considering all the financial trade-offs in the whole process and other trade-offs, the decision that was taken is proper under the current circumstances. I think it's on the matter of BOTSOC. That's how far for now, Chair, unless if there are other things that I still need to say on that one. But the other one, Chair, that you were referring to from Honorable Winkler, I saw Ms. Kumza from the department on the policy side associated with this was responding to. So that's why I was just leaving it to the continuation of what she was saying in that regard, because there are policy issues in that space that can be best attended to from the department side. Chair. Honorable Chair.
Let's agree, Honorable Brian should put it in writing. And then we must get a comprehensive response from you on the matter of BOTSOC.
Thank you.
Honorable Brian, will you be able to sleep properly tonight?
Yes, Chair, I can. I mean, I think the question is simple. The question is, please, can we have a specific breakdown of the exact reasons for the cancellation of the existing membership agreement between BOTSOC and SANBI? That's what we'd like to hear.
So you will get that in writing. Am I right or am I right?
You'll get that in writing. If we have to, present it in that form, that's fine, including also the financial modeling as we understand it, and which also played this a critical aspect to that, and the background to the relationship and where we are going with it, as I indicated, and also these other exclusions that we have made. Of course, yes, we'll be able to do that, Chair. Honorable Chair.
How soon?
We can do it in 10 days. We should be able to provide that in 10 days.
Okay, it's fine. We will expect that. Please forward it to the Secretary of the Portfolio Committee, who will then in turn share it with us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Ms. Kumza.
Thank you, Chair. I will attempt to respond to two of the questions. Notwithstanding the fact that on some of them, I think, especially around the game meat related matters, that work is being coordinated within another chief directorate within the department, but I will attempt to respond to it. Indeed, Honorable Winkler, we did as a department receive quite a number of comments on the draft game meat strategy when it was published for public participation sometime last year. And some of the concerns related to the fact that this strategy could see a wholesale commodification of our biological resources. And that's one of the elements that are being tightened up by the department before we finalize the strategy, because certainly we do not want to kill the goose that lays the golden egg. And part of that review is also informed by the Global Biodiversity Framework, which was agreed upon last year in December as part of the Convention on Biological Diversity's COP decisions. And as a department, we have agreed under the guidance of the minister that the white paper is our mechanism to implement the Global Biodiversity Framework. So we certainly are geared towards the implementation of those resolutions at a global level. And we are ensuring that at a national level, we will implement the 23 targets of the Global Biodiversity Framework as framed in the white paper, which has now been approved. So in the revision of the game meat strategy, we have ensured that we will strengthen the conservation aspect of the strategy in line with the spirit and the ethos of the white paper. Then in respect of the questions around the permitting matters relating to the cheetah and its export, I think we have already responded, the minister has already responded to a question by Honorable Mr. Singh, and we can make that response from the minister available to the committee, because there were many considerations, including guidance from the scientific authority, which we rely upon as a department. So there were many considerations, and these are detailed in the draft response by the minister, and we'll make that available. Thanks, Chair.
Honorable Winkler, will you be able to sleep with that response?
Chair, I'm cognizant of the fact that there is a draft response by the minister, but what I'm failing to understand is that if the scientific authority is the one that advises on the non-detrimental findings that inform the export of certain species, especially Appendix 1 species, how is it that cheetah were exported despite the fact that the only NDF that we can currently legally use is the 2015 one? Because the 2021 NDF, the process hasn't been followed to its conclusion. Public consultation has not taken place yet. So I just don't understand how the export of the cheetah were then, I think, legally approved, considering the 2015 NDF. I'm just, if they could just very simplistically explain that, please.
Ms. Kunza?
Thank you once more, Chair. As I had indicated that there were many considerations that were made, including guidance from the scientific authority. And what was also considered was the 2020 NDF, the population viability analysis, which has been conducted and is dated October 2022, amongst many other scientific documents that were considered, Chair. So the decision was made on the basis of the best available information. Thank you.
Yeah, me. Okay. Can we move now to South African Weather Services? Can I invite the chairperson of the board there?
Good morning, Honorable Chairperson, members of the Portfolio Committee, the Honorable Deputy Minister, esteemed colleagues, and representatives from other organizations, acknowledging the Honorable Minister and the DG in absentia. Through the development and provision of innovative meteorological solutions, generation of new scientific insights in atmospheric and related sciences, optimization of infrastructure, and provision of quality data, the entity endeavors to contribute towards the vision of an improved quality of life for all in South Africa. It is my pleasure to introduce the South African Weather Services Annual Performance Plan for the 2023/2024 financial year. With me is the Deputy Chairperson, Mr. Itani Paduli. To present this annual performance plan is the CEO, Mr. Isham Abada, together with the CFO, Mr. Norman Mzizi, executives, Dr. Jonas Mpepia, Ms. Petro Decker, Mr. Mnigelinda Bambi, and supported by Mr. Tituso Mohapi, who is the specialist strategy planning and reporting. The effects of global warming continue to bring about the increased extreme weather events with undesirable and devastating effects. In the Global Risk Report of 2022, extreme weather is once again highlighted as one of the most severe risks on global scale over the next 10 years. Through the implementation of impact-based weather forecasting, South African Weather Services continues to provide impact-based service weather warnings to the public in order to assist with mitigating the associated impacts. The provision of this service assists disaster management authorities to coordinate responses and mitigate the forecasted undesirable impacts. The South African Weather Services remains in recovery mode as a result of the well-documented hammering it took in the wake of the economic slump that followed the COVID-19 pandemic. Optimal productivity of this entity is reliant on sufficient availability of financial resources to enable and support its functions. As such, South African Weather Services is actively improving its revenue generation through, among others, mobilizing funds from external funders in the forms of fees generated through different projects and organizations. These collaborations enable the entity to perform research in various weather and climate fields and increases the reputation of South African Weather Services scientific prowess. This annual performance plan, as well as operation plans, will be delivered in an environment characterized by a financial fiscus. Prioritization of projects is the order of business under these circumstances, after these constraints. The effective discharge of South African Weather Services cannot be compromised despite the fiscal challenges. As such, efforts to obtain and command a fit-for-purpose infrastructure will continue through optimal maintenance and upgrade of infrastructure and information systems. Notwithstanding the electricity challenges of the country in the form of load shedding, South African Weather Services has an obligation to ensure the effective discharge of its mandate, which is heavily reliant on an operational remote sensing observational infrastructure and information systems. To this end, the entity will implement its soon-to-be approved Infrastructure Sustainability Plan, which outlines the expansion, automation, and modernization endeavors, emphasizing alternative power solutions for its observation networks. This much-needed contemporary observation infrastructure will enable the entity to improve the provision of timeous and quality meteorological information for the protection of lives and property in South Africa. Chairperson and members of the Portfolio Committee, please allow me to request the Chief Executive Officer and the Chief Financial Officer to present the summary of South African Weather Services Annual Performance Plan 2023/2024. I thank you.
Good morning, Honorable Chair, Honorable Members, Deputy Minister, my fellow CEO, and all our executives and colleagues. Chair, I'll take you through the presentation quickly. Next slide, please. This just gives the legislative environment and background, and I will not go into detail on this. I think members are aware of where we get our mandate from. Just to say that we are aligned with Chapter 2 and Section 24 in particular. This slide outlines our vision, which is South African weather-related solutions for everyone, every day, and also our mission and core values, which I think members are familiar with. Next slide, please. I think this is a very, very important slide, Chair. It indicates what our priorities are for the next financial year. And essentially, we want to strengthen SAWS as a designated authoritative voice for issuing warnings relating to hydrometeorological and air quality related hazards. And there's obviously a need for us to upgrade our technical and technological infrastructure, as well as equip our human resources with adequate capability. Load shedding, Chair, as everyone well knows, presented challenges for us and impacted on the optimal performance of our observations infrastructure. It led to breakdowns. It affected the quality of data from the infrastructure, and also our operational targets have not been achieved as a result of this. As the chair mentioned, we're developing an infrastructure sustainability plan. We've emphasized the radar infrastructure in that plan, but it's quite a comprehensive plan that we are finalizing with the board. And it outlines our proposed expansion, automation, modernization, and upgrading of our surface observation networks. And we want to restore and maintain the optimal infrastructure operation. We also envisage to have a command a fit-for-purpose observations infrastructure that will enable the provision of reliable, timely, and accurate forecasts and warnings on weather-related events, and for subsequent better assessment of horizontal and vertical structures of the atmosphere, especially when we have occurrences of tropical cyclones and deep mesoscale convective systems such as thunderstorms and tornadoes. We also plan to advance the telecommunication systems for the transmission of data from the remote stations, and also for fast dissemination of forecasts and warnings to the public and national, regional, and international data end users. Chair, maybe just to mention there that our service providers are also impacted by load shedding, and we're looking at alternatives like possibly satellite communications, just to move away from that, but that's in its infancy stages. So we are looking at alternative technologies as well to see how we can improve our service offerings. In terms of the infrastructure sustainability plan, some of the issues that it encompasses include dual polarization, upgrades for our S-band radars, modernization and replacement of our C-band radars, and also we're looking at peripheral systems and infrastructure, such as installation of automatic voltage regulators, diesel generators, bulk fuel tanks, the acquisition of additional bowsers for some of our sites, and then also UPSs for power stability. Next slide, please. Chair, in terms of our priorities, we're looking at aging infrastructure, as I indicated, and I'm not going to go through that again. I think I spent some time on a lot of time on that in the previous slide, as well as the issue around load shedding. And here specifically, I want to mention the issue of considering alternative energy usage to reduce the impact of load shedding. We're also looking, Chair, at improving our computing facilities, and we've just put out a tender for an HPC, and we're also looking at using the cloud in future. And the purpose of that, it would obviously be a better ability to store data, but also looking at cost benefit in terms of whether we move from a CapEx to an OpEx model, and whether it would benefit the organization overall. We're also looking at, in terms of skills development, we formalized our employee value proposition, and we continuously considering opportunities and partnerships to enhance our employee value proposition. In that regard, we've started job grading and evaluating our posts, and then we're going to benchmark them against the market. So we want to actually improve our situation in that regard as well. Chair, this slide very quickly just talks to government priorities and how we contribute to them. Particularly, we are improving the functionality of the National Ambient Air Quality Monitoring Network, so we can ensure that the data availability for research purposes and also the management of air quality by regulatory authorities is improved. We're looking at management tools that have been developed to contribute toward the reduction of air pollution levels. And obviously this affects the health of people in the priority areas. And we're hoping that we'd be able to assist in ensuring a better quality of life for citizens in the surrounding communities. And then we've also got our SOAR studentship program. Then in terms of social cohesion and safe communities, Obviously, the source plays a very vital role in terms of protecting our communities. We are looking at the continuous development and improvement of our early warning impact-based forecasting, so that it contributes to safer communities. Then also the dissemination of life-saving weather warnings continues in terms of our different channels. And we look at radio, television, SMS, and emails as some of them. And then in terms of transformation and job creation, we contribute to the economic development in various sectors, including agriculture, energy, transport, mining, marine, and the water sector. And also in terms of unlocking the economic potential of our oceans, we contribute through the provision of met ocean information as well. And this is for public good consumption, and we hope in the future for commercial operations. Next slide, please. Still continuing with the alignment with government priorities, the Hydrogen Society Roadmap is one of the government strategies, and it looks at how to deploy hydrogen and hydrogen-related technologies as part of South Africa's economic development and greening objectives. Air pollution, Chair, alongside climate change, is one of the biggest threats to human health, and we contribute to the success of this new economy through monitoring the air quality in the priority areas, the Highveld priority area, the Vaal Triangle, and the Waterberg-Bojanala areas in terms of our forecasting initiatives. Chair, we also developed a air quality scenario tool for the Mpumalanga air quality management and planning. And this tool provides a high resolution air quality conditions for different sector-based emission reduction scenarios. And it's important for the provincial authorities to assist in determining under which emission reduction strategy the intended air quality standard can be achieved. And it's a significant product, or it could be for other authorities as well, resource managers and policymakers, so that they can conduct cost-benefit analyses for their emission reduction strategies, as well as to prepare and implement their short and long-term plans for this area. Chair, in terms of the continuing along this line, climate variability and climate change have exacerbated food insecurity. They influence things like agricultural production, water quality and supply, as well as our ecological integrity of ecosystems. And as a result, our rural communities are experiencing increased levels of food insecurity due to dependence on agriculture and natural resources as the basis of livelihoods. Weather and climate therefore play an important role in this production, and the provision of timeless and accurate access to weather and climate information can therefore contribute towards improving agricultural production and food security in vulnerable rural communities. We continue to fight against hunger by providing education as well as weather and climate information, so that we enable the farmers, including our subsistence farmers, to adjust their operational activities and long-term seasonal planning in terms of agricultural production systems. Next slide, please. And Chair, in terms of the other government priorities, one that was highlighted substantially was corruption, and because it's impeding the country's growth and development. As a result, we've developed a code of conduct and ethics policy, which considers effective ethics management as a critical element of our activities. It's also aligned with corporate governance best practice and spells out the general principles and ethical standards that need to be observed by the board, management, employees, and people doing business with us and on behalf of us. And also to the extent possible that we can influence people that do business with us. We also want to promote the eradication of criminal and other irregular conduct in SOAS. And we have a whistleblowing policy also that we've revised and redeveloped. And it's supported by a hotline that we have available for staff to report any suspected fraudulent or corrupt activities in the entity. Next slide, please. Next, thank you. In terms of our target share, I'll just highlight where the targets being reduced, and you can see here that in terms of our national weather forecast, we're maintaining 98%. In terms of our accuracy of our aerodrome warning, similarly, percentage accuracy of our TAFs, there we're moving up from 92%, which I might add is higher than the global requirements, ICAO global requirements. And then also in terms of the solar, so safety of life at sea, we're moving that one up steadily as well. Thank you. Next slide. In terms of our enhanced meteorological related body of knowledge and number of research outputs, next year and the year after we'll try and we'll keep it the same, but we'll ramp it up in the outer year. Next slide. Similarly, in terms of our the same output, and our indicator will be here is the number of new or enhanced solutions for the climate sensitive sections, and we plan to do one per year. And then we're planning to do 4 non-climate specific solutions per year for each of the following 2 years, and then 6 in the outer year. Next slide. In terms of our infrastructure chair, notwithstanding the constraints that we are having with load shedding, you'll see that our targets there are still extremely high. We are hoping against hope that either the load shedding will decrease or our plans to supplement the peripheral items as well as our alternative electricity options will be implemented sooner rather than later. So we don't want to drop the targets there. And you'll note that, Chair, it has impacted very, very severely. So we're just drawing attention to the fact that we're hoping that for the longer term, we'll be able to maintain our weather station, our observational stations output and meet our local as well as international requirements. Next slide. Thank you. In terms of the optimal core technological capability, this relates to the air quality areas, the stations that are available on the air quality information system that meets minimum data requirements, and the percentages are still the same. And then similarly, in terms of the AWS automatic weather stations and rainfall stations climate data that are available on the National Climate Database, there we've got an 85% target as well. Thank you. In terms of our sub-program 4, which is administration, we're looking at percentage of local expenditure in terms of affirmative procurement. You will see there that we are on 75% for the next 2 years, but then we move it up to about 80%. Similarly, our level of B rating, we're hoping to get to 6. We're coming from 8, and then move it down in the outer years. In terms of our unregulated commercial revenue, we're hoping to ramp that up periodically over the next 2 to 3 years as well. And then we obviously want an unqualified opinion with no material findings, and we set that as a target as well. Thank you. In terms of our attrition rate, we are hoping to have an attrition rate of less than 8%. And also our workplace skills plan to have more than 80% of our targets met there. In relation to employment equity and particularly women in management, we set a target of 42%. Our previous one was 40, and we're obviously moving to, well, not obviously, but we are moving to 45% in the out years. The difficulty here would be that in some instances we have to wait for attrition to happen before we can actually meet the equity targets in some instances. With regard to people with disabilities, it's 2% over the next 2 years and then 3% in the outer year. And then our youth in internship and learnerships, those are our targets there, as well as the number of placements in work integrated learning. Next slide. We're hoping to have quite a few brand positioning and stakeholder networks. I'm not going to go through the detail there, but you can once again see that we are upping our targets as well there. Next slide. Just in terms of the next slide, we're just talking to the key risks. And one of them is that we have a weak core innovation capability as far as our science, engineering, and technology is going. We've implemented the career ladder for sector education and training skills. And then we're also looking at implementation of our research. Well, we have started, but continuation of the implementation of our research and development strategy. Then also we're looking at the second risk, which is an inability to attract new sectors that can utilize our products and services. We've reviewed and implemented the cost recovery mechanisms, including the marine and other sector solutions. We're looking at implementation and updating of those sectors, and specifically, once again, marine and renewable energy, and then also looking at the rollout of impact-based forecasting products and services to weather-sensitive sectors, and we mentioned those sectors earlier as well. Then, in terms of revenue generation from the sale of our met products and services, we're exploring other opportunities in the other sectors as well. We have implemented and are continuously monitoring our revenue turnaround strategy. We've got a commercial committee that generates, whose function it is to generate new ideas for revenue generation, and also to make sure that we grow revenue through strategic partners with other partnerships with other organizations. Thank you, Chair. And then we also want to develop a different dissemination channel strategy to deal with the risk of inaccurate weather information dissemination, as I mentioned earlier. And also we're looking to conclude additional memoranda of agreements and service level agreements with some of our dissemination partners. In terms of our infrastructure performance, I think I've mentioned quite a bit of that in relation to the technical plans and also the turnaround strategy. We're also looking at managing our third-party support in terms of maintenance contracts and ensuring that they deliver on those contracts. I've mentioned the standby power infrastructure and also training of staff. In terms of our technological changes, we're looking at implementing our ICT turnaround plan. We've made quite a bit of advances already in terms of that. But we're also going to implement the radar software upgrades. And we have also, once again, an ICT steering committee that meets periodically to advise in this regard. As I mentioned, the HPC, and also the enhancement of our staff internally. And then also, I've talked to the monitoring and evaluation of service providers in terms of maintenance, but also in terms of ICT. Just in terms of the governance, we're looking at implementation of our talent strategy, board performance evaluations, succession planning at EXCO and particularly at senior management level. We are looking at addressing our equity initiatives and addressing any gaps that we found through our 360-degree evaluations that we've done at management level. The next risk is an inability for us to meet our strategic priorities. There we are looking at enhancing partnerships with other organizations so that we can build our own capacity, and also looking at filling key positions and implementation of our succession planning, as I said. We have managed to fill most of the key positions, including the marketing and channel manager post, as well as our supply chain manager post. We're also looking at the implementation of the revenue turnaround strategy, as I've indicated, but also our cost containment strategy that continues. In terms of our strategic positioning, we've developed a strategy just recently with the new manager that's come in for communications, that's looking specifically at stakeholder relations and focusing on brand promotion. And we'll be, very importantly, Chair, lobbying for an executive council position in the World Meteorological Organization. When we are successful, they will be part of the team that makes global decisions in relation to meteorology, and that guides the NMHSs, or National Meteorological and Hydrological services all over the world. So we're hoping that we'll be successful in that regard. And then also we're looking at enhancing our plans in terms of forming international and regional partnerships. Next slide. In terms of our quality management system, we are ISO compliant, and obviously we want to continue that, but we're also looking at developing an internal document and information management system. And then we're looking at, in terms of our critical skills as a key risk, attracting and retaining particularly women in management and leadership positions, our succession planning, implementation, and talent strategy. And then in terms of our non-compliance to supply chain management prescript risk, we've endeavored to train the bid committees, and will continue to do that, and continuously improve our supply chain management activities, and also contract management. And I've mentioned there that we've got a new supply chain manager as well, that we're hoping will add the impetus to those mitigation measures. In terms of our financial unsustainability as a risk, we're looking at cost containment measures, as I indicated, and our revenue turnaround strategy. Chair, I'm going to request that we please hand over for the next slide to the Chief Financial Officer, Mr. Mzizi, so he can take the committee through the numbers for the next. Thank you, Chair.
Good morning, Chair, honorable members, the Minister in absentia, Deputy Minister, CEOs, chairs, and colleagues. I presented the financials for SOS over the MTF period. Chair, as you can see that for the past 2 years, in 2021 and 21-22, 22-23, we had to convert our government grant CAPEX to OPEX. Because if one looks at our government grant OPEX, is sitting at around 200 million. And you take that figure, you compare it with our expenditure of employees of 290 million in 22-23 and 173 admin. It takes you to 463. Now, the government grant OPEX was not sufficient for us to meet our total expenditure. Hence, we had to convert part of our CAPEX to OPEX. I must indicate, Chair, that that's not a sustainable situation. And we like to thank the department as well as National Treasury that in 23-24 and 24-25, we see the government grant OPEX increased from 200 million to 300 million and 352 million in 24-25. 2025. And this is done so that we don't convert the much needed money for infrastructure into OPEX. However, if we look at the situation in year 25-26, our government grant OPEX goes down to the 232 million, which it has been the trend. Now, for the year 25-26, that will be a year that will be challenging for us in terms of financial sustainability. As the CEO touched on revenue turnaround strategies, implementing cost containment measurements, we expect that those results will assist us in that year. Chair, I must indicate that over the MTF period, if we look for the figures for 23-24, our total revenue, we're sitting at 692 million. And we're looking at a total expenditure of 463 million and depreciation of 39 million. And we will have about 74 million that was utilized for CAPEX. Now, in 23-24, the total figure revenue is 692, and we have 191 million that will be used for CAPEX. And this CAPEX amount will be used in the much needed areas of the infrastructure turnaround strategies. And the CEO covered priority areas of load shedding, infrastructure, computing, and staff. And the staff will be covered under the employee cost, because our intention is to ensure that we attract and retain skilled people over the MTF period. Now, if one looks at our MTF figures, Chair, we can see that for the next 2 years, which is 23-24, 24-25, we will be covered in terms of the monies that we'll need for CAPEX. However, when one looks at the year 25-26, there might be a challenge because the government grant OPEX will have dropped to the figures of 200 million. However, we expect that the situation will improve in terms of the commercial grant. Now, in terms of the commercial income, Chair, one can see that, for example, if one takes the aviation income pre-COVID, it was 180 million. Now, for 23-24, we're looking at 108 million, going up to 128 million and 140 million in 25-26, which means that the situation pre-COVID, when it comes to aviation income, we expect that situation to recover around year 24-25. And the chair indicated that we are mobilizing resources, and that money is indicated or disclosed under other income, under donor funds. For 23-24, we're looking at about 25 million and growing up to 8 million and 34 million. And these monies will be used for the various expenditures as illustrated below. With that, Chair, thanks very much.
Thank you very much. Source. Please switch off your mic, Mr. Mzizi. Mr. Norman Mzizi, please switch off your mic. Honorable Weber, followed by Honorable Paulsen.
Thank you, Chair. We've got load shedding, so I'm not switching my camera on. I would like to thank the SAWS for their presentation today. It is a far better presentation since 2019, but I'm going to just address a couple of issues. Firstly, I see all the planning and all the laws and all the policies implemented, like the code of conduct. Everything is now from 23 to 24. Now, I like your code of conduct. I just took a couple of stuff, but has it been finished? Have you started to implement it? And then I think one of the biggest issues I have with everything we do is the enforcement of all the work we do on paper. You very nicely went and you realigned it, everything of what the government has said, but this is on paper. So I do want to ask that we are going to come back and see if all these things are implemented and if it is working. I would like to know, you mentioned, and you are supporting the sustainable farmers, and I would like to know, how do you do that? Then you had one slide where you spoke about the air drone warnings, and your target was 98%. What I would like to know is how many, I'm sure there's stations of air drones, or is there, for instance, air drones in every province, in every municipality? How are you using it? Or are you moving to a place where there's already trouble for air drones to go and look at it? How many air drones are there really in the country that your target is 98%? Because for me to reach a target of 98%, you should be all over the country. And is that the case? Availability of automatic weather infrastructure, your target is 85%. Where are we currently? Because we need to measure your weather stations. So if your target is 85%, that according to me is quite high. So where are we currently? And so we can measure from where we go to 85%. Then you spoke about Sakis, the air quality status is 80%. This has been a continuous problem for me. Again, the criteria. Where do you decide to do the air monitoring? Every time I get the answer, we don't have a weather station there. That's not part that we do. But if you're responsible for air quality, shouldn't the criteria be to go to, firstly, prioritize the very bad air quality areas, like in the high-file priority areas, because that has a major impact on our weather, our air pollution, and so many other things. So again, my question is, your aim here, your target is 80%, but why do we not have our heavy pollutant areas on Sakis, and why are you not monitoring them as well? I agree, there was a slide on your communication. Things don't come out to the correct people at the same time. Please work on that, because we currently in South Africa, this is a must. You talk about meteorology, and I would like to know, have you been working closely with the Meerkat sandparks in Northern Cape? They also do research and things like that. If not, that's a suggestion of people actually being able to assist and help you. So I am very, very concerned about the supply chain management. I can see you've worked on it since, well, 2019, but supply chain management, training of the bid committees, that is something that has to be established. I understand it's continuous, people turn around and you have to continue doing that. But our finances here is just of such a place that our supply chain management should be already compliant and adhere to everything that they should do. So I'm very grateful for the training, but I'm just concerned that we still not have arrived in that within 3.5, 4 years. And by when will this be functional and compliant? And then thank you for the presentation. Thank you very much.
Honorable Paulsen.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, and shukran so much, Mr. Abada, for the presentation. Ramadan Kareem for what remains of this glorious month to you and your family. Mr. Abada, we've spoken about this for the past number of years, I think, and it's about the weather stations being affected by load shedding. So I think you should give us a concrete plan as to what is being done, because it's critical that those weather stations, especially the ones that assist our aviation, and then also the other matter is, yesterday there was fog cover in Cape Town, with the result that many flights were rerouted to George, as well as flights from Johannesburg to the Eastern Cape that also had to be rerouted due to fog cover. So I'd like to know, was this as a result of failure of weather stations that we couldn't determine this? Because then there was complete chaos in George because of rerouting of flights due to fog cover. If there's an explanation for this, because I would imagine that these are the sort of matters that can be circumvented through the services offered by the South African Weather Services. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable Paulsen. Honorable Winkler.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the presentation. With regard to the air quality monitoring stations that report on the SACI's website, is it raw data that's represented on the site, or is that processed information where then specific pollutants are then reflected on the website? I just want to understand, is that, as I said, is that information processed or is it raw? For example, I looked on the SACI's website in eThekwini, I think 2 evenings ago, and I saw that the air quality was very poor. Now, in instances where you have anomalous air quality incidents happening quite consistently, is there any communication with compliance and enforcement in the department with the varying bodies in the province, like the municipality, the KwaZulu-Natal ETIA, for example? How is this communication or this information then carried through so that something can actually be done about the poor air quality? Then, under meteorological related solutions provided to meet user needs, in terms of climate change impacts that are likely going to increase in frequency, especially when it comes to drought and other extreme weather, the impact on the agricultural sector and food security, as well as the availability of water, is going to become increasingly important. How exactly is this information from SAWS going to be utilized in a way that is useful to these various sectors? I know that there's something that you're considering, but what sort of idea or plan do you have in mind so that one can foresee perhaps these extreme weather events and how they impact, so that these sectors can then prepare well in advance, and to ensure that this communication is effectively conveyed to the relevant stakeholders? Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Winkler. Honorable Dlamini.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the presentation. Just two things that I want to understand, or maybe you can be able to help me. One is on a question of the weather stations, because most of the weather stations I see they're in an urban area. Do we have a breakdown or a plan to decentralize them, in particular to the rural areas? Because if you check the affected areas, most of the time when they get least of the warning, it becomes the rural areas. Do you have a plan on that one of making sure that now at least even on rural areas, they can be able to get this weather station? The second question that I need is the challenges for prediction of the weather. I just need the plans in order to deal with this key risk management thing. One, it is based on an available data. You've spoken about it. To have a plan on that one, how best we can be able to do that now can be able to have a sustainable plan. Two, is a time frame of analyzing the data. Because the more we fail or to take more time to analyze data, therefore events are taking us out because of this climate change that is taking place. The last one is a complexity of weather events that are taking place. What plan do we have in order to mitigate or to understand, to make sure that now we're able now to turn around time on a question of these three matters that I've raised? Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Dlamini. Isham, the Weather Service identified load shedding as one of its challenges. I'm raising this in line with what has been raised by, I suspect, Honorable Paulsen. You have identified load shedding as one of your challenges to infrastructure sustainability plan. And the solution being presented is the implementation of the infrastructure sustainability plan. I think I saw also that on slide 5. Well, what would the details of this entail in terms of load shedding to ensure that you don't come here at the end of this APP to tell us that the radar availability was affected by load shedding? Isham?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members. Just in terms of Ms. Weber's comments, in terms of our code of conduct, we have already, Ms. Weber, developed it. It has been workshopped with our staff members, as far as I'm aware, and our executive corporate services can just correct me if I'm not giving the appropriate information, but to my recollection, it has been workshopped with staff members, so it's already being implemented and they are aware of what the requirements are. Your second question, Ms. Weber, in terms of enforcement, we obviously, if there are any infringements of the code of conduct, we definitely deal with those and deal with them definitively. In terms of the sustainable support to farmers, I'm going to ask my executive, Dr. Mpepia, to just add to what I'm going to say now, but we do seasonal forecasts. So in other words, we predict what's going to happen in the seasons that are still to come. And that allows the farmers and the agricultural sector specifically to do their planning in relation to their crops, and also how they deal with crop rotation and planting and so forth. But I'll ask Dr. Mpepia to come in a little bit later to just address that issue. In terms of your issue around it's not drones, Ms. Weber, It's aerodrome warnings. So these are linked to our airports. And once again, I'll if there's a need, I'll ask our executive infrastructure to just assist in this regard. But every airport has these aerodrome warnings, and it also links to Honorable Paul's comment related to the fog. So before any planes can land or take off, they look to the weather services for provision of weather data that would either allow them to land or not. And that's probably the reason why the flights were rerouted to another airport. Obviously, it's a natural phenomenon, so some of them do occur quite quickly, and you then have to make alternative plans. But some of these you can't necessarily predict that easily. In terms of the automatic weather station availability, we've been around about, I think it's 80%. And once again, I'll ask the executive infrastructure to just give us an indication of where we came from. But I must mention, Ms. Weber, that over the last 2 quarters, we've been heavily impacted because of the load shedding. The difficulty that we sit with is that some of our equipment, even if the power comes on, it doesn't automatically start up. You have to allow the machine time to recalibrate, and some of them take half an hour, some an hour, some 2 hours. And once that happens, you usually have 1 or 2 hours of measurement, and then it kicks in again in terms of load shedding, especially at the heightened levels. He will give an indication of our weather stations availability, because we have done a report for our board in that regard. But as I said, it's not looking good for the past quarter. In relation to the SAQUIS, we do the air quality monitoring in conjunction with the DFFE. And ma'am, we do prioritize particularly the bad air quality areas. So the priority areas would be your Vaal area, because of all the manufacturing and steel manufacturing and so forth that happens in that area. And then also the Highveld area, which is also regarded as one of the major pollutant areas. I think it was only the Bojanala area where it was done almost proactively in response to what was going to happen there. But it was also identified as a potential area where there would be more air quality issues. And I think that was the reason those 3 in particular were identified as priority air quality areas. In terms of our communications, as indicated, Ms. Weber, we are looking at our strategies to see how we can actually improve our dissemination of weather. Then thank you for the suggestion in terms of the meerkat. We do work also, ma'am, with SANSA, the South African National Space Agency. And we also collaborate with various other state entities like the Agricultural Research Council, the DFFE, CSIR on various of our collaborative projects, so that we enhance our service offering in that regard. Finally, ma'am, in terms of the supply chain management issues, we've come a long way in terms of supply chain, particularly over the last couple of years. We're getting, we have gotten our governance issues sorted out. And if you look at our previous audits, and we're hoping with the current audit as well, you'll see that compared to the previous years, there have not been issues raised in with regard to supply chain management, particularly. So I think for now, if we have to look at our audit that was done recently, I think we were fairly functional and compliant, to use your word, ma'am. Honorable Paulsa Afwan, and thank you for the good wishes, and the same for you and your family. Just in terms of the critical weather stations and those related to aviation, you'll notice on our presentation, Honorable Paulse, that those targets are very, very high, and those targets are set. They're actually in excess of what's required in terms of the international standard, which is set by ICAO. So they are, and those we prioritize in terms of continuous maintenance because it's a safety issue. And those weather stations, if something goes wrong at a particular airport, we attend to those as a matter of urgency and emergency, because it would imply that if they're not functional, it could impact people's lives that are flying in or flying out of a particular airport. I've addressed the issue of the fog cover, but if Mr. Ndabambe wants to add to that, I'm happy for him to do so. Honorable Winkler, as I said, the air quality monitoring happens in conjunction with the department, and my understanding is that the measurements are taken in the particular areas and they consolidated and then put on the app in relation to the overall air quality for that particular area or region. So I don't think it's raw data that's put on there. It's definitely processed. And I think in terms of the monitoring points, there'd be too many to put them as raw data on that particular app. But I think it's definitely processed data. In relation to the air quality and the compliance and enforcement, I think, as I said, it's something that we do in conjunction with the DFFE and the air quality section. So definitely, if there are anomalies found, the compliance and enforcement section, I used to head it before, are alerted, and we then go in and do an investigation in terms of where that point source is for that particular area, and also whether they should be charged or whether there are possibilities of actually improving the situation based on the readings that we're getting there. In terms of the climate change impacts, so it is, we agree with you, ma'am, it is more important. And in terms of what we're doing, we have a global framework for climate services, which then feeds into our national framework for climate services. And that then is meant to give guidance. And I'll ask Dr. Mpepia, as the executive responsible for climate services in the Weather Service, to just expand on that. We then do those analyses, time series analyses of the climate change and the impacts on the various sectors. And obviously then they would use that information to inform what the future is going to look like. And that also talks to, in a sense, Mr. Dlamini's, some of Mr. Dlamini's questions in terms of, what we do with the weather events and how we use that, to predict future weather events. So I think those climate change services basically serve to inform the sectors about what to expect, and they then are able to act accordingly. So, for example, the El Nino Southern Oscillation would indicate whether, depending if it's La Nina or El Nino, whether we'd be getting drought or rain, and so sectors would then be able to plan accordingly. Then, Honorable Dlamini, the weather stations, in terms of the rationale for placing them, yes, a lot of them are in urban areas, but we also have stations in some of the rural areas. The rationale for those, I think, are because of particularly climate data that was collected in those areas over time. But Mr. Ndabambe would give a better indication in terms of where and how the AWSs and ARSs are placed. But I think there's several over the expanse of South Africa, and I think currently he'd be able to indicate exactly which areas are covered in terms of that. Then the issue around the data and analysis of data, Honorable Dlamini, that we do on a daily basis virtually for our immediate weather. And we look at the data that comes in from our various observation stations, and we interpret that data, but we also do a longer analysis of data, and specifically that links into our climate services and how we use that data for climate prediction and also weather prediction. So you mentioned the severe weather events and how we use our data to inform that. So as I said, if we take, for example, the severe weather that we've been having in terms of the rain and flooding, those we would use, for example, to inform planning. And just to give a concrete example of that, Honorable Dlamini, we engage with the department's working groups that talk to environmental assessments and planning as well. And we'd indicate to them, okay, there's a risk in future of severe flooding in the KZN area, for example. You know, whenever you grant an environmental authorization, you'd have to take that into account in terms of your planning. And that gets then disseminated to the provincial authorities and the local authorities as well. So that's how we link in terms of the services that we provide. Chair, just in terms of your question around the sustainability plan, you'll recall at our last meeting, Chair, the issue of the radars came up. We developed a radar sustainability plan, which is a shorter plan, which feeds into the overall plan. The radar plan is ready, and we've seen that one as a priority, but obviously we can't do all 13 of our radars immediately because of the cost related to that. But I'm talking just general upgrading and that kind of thing. But in terms of the alternative energy, we are prioritizing our main radars. So we've got, for example, our Irene radar station, which is the priority for us. So we'll make sure, as far as Irene goes, that we have every available alternative energy source, and we'll deal with them in terms of that priority, in terms of what information they give us, where they're located, and what it means overall for the country in terms of severe weather. So as I said, the sustainability plan for the radars has been developed already. We have all these other observational mechanisms that we also have plans for, and that plan, Chair, is still a work in progress. We are going to implement, however, some of the initiatives already, and we have started already. So, for example, the data logging initiative in terms of getting better connectivity, that's already in process. We're just waiting for delivery of some of the equipment. And in other instances, Chair, we'll have to phase it over the next 6 to 12 months. And in some instances where it talks about maybe replacement of a radar, that would be a slightly longer term. But I have to caution, Chair, that while we're doing that, we'll still have, and hopefully by the end of the year we won't have that, but in the next couple of months, we'll still have poor performance of some of our infrastructure. And I want members to please note that, because the procurement processes will take some time. And then we've also got to ensure that our technicians get out to these various pieces of equipment. So just to give an indication, I mean, I think we've got about 270 odd weather stations, and you have to go to each of those stations and then address the issues related to that particular station. And then the 13 radars, and so forth and so forth. So as I said, some of the initiatives have already started, and that plan I think is sitting at 70 pages already, Chair. So we will finalize that very, very shortly. And then we'll have a conclusive or comprehensive plan for all the infrastructure. Thank you, Chair. I think I'll allow our executives to address any of the issues that I may have missed. Mr. Ndabambi and then Mr. Mpepia, Dr. Mpepia.
Thank you, CE. Good morning, good afternoon, Honorable Chair, Honorable members, also Honorable Deputy Ministers, and also the chairpersons of the board that are here. Honorable Chair, the CEO is correct in terms of the aerodrome warnings. So these are the warnings that we give at the airport, at all the airports, so that the aircraft, they know whether they can land or they should not land. And then if they land, they adjust their instruments accordingly. And then if they are flying visual, so we advise them if a visual landing or flying is advised or not advised. So then it links now to the challenge of the fog in Cape Town. The fog was predicted the previous day already, honorable members. So the challenges now that led to a diversion, it was an instrument problem. This instrument is called RVR, Runway Visual Range, which is an AXA instrument. So if that instrument was working, so the aircraft were going to be able to land because it's instrument flying aircraft members. And then as my CEO has indicated that to the question, what are the current infrastructure availability? Yes, this last quarter, it is low. We've also calculated the number of hours where we had load shedding, which is also corresponding to the low availability. Our radars in the Q4, for example, were at 31.3%, which is the lowest ever. But then with a lightning detection network, that one was much better. It was at 83%, almost 84, 83.9% during this quarter. And also our automatic weather stations were at 77%. And then automatic rainfall stations were at 73%. So the hardest impacted was the radar, as the CEO is saying, that also after the load shedding, it takes time to stabilize. And then, honorable members, I think I'm just checking now which that is not covered by the CEO. Also, where I would like to add, or in terms of the stations, yes, it's few on the rural, but we do have on the rural areas. We try to look for secure sites because we're experiencing vandalism and theft. And then in the rural areas, we identify schools. But now in the expansion plan, the most gaps are on the eastern half of the Eastern Cape, and also the KZN interior. That's how we prioritize our extension. And then going to Limpopo Northwest, and then and Northern Cape. But all the municipalities need to have weather stations because the impact-based warning system is assisted by the presence of these weather stations, including the flash flood guidance system. So the priority now is to look at those municipalities that don't have weather stations, because we've got a few that don't have a weather station. I think the last one, honorable members, is the one Honorable Chair was asking, say now, CEO has highlighted challenges of the load shedding, how what are these plans are containing that will combat this load shedding. So these plans, they've got alternative source of energy. That's what is important. But then the radar is not about also the energy only. There are other supporting equipment that ensures the stability of the infrastructure. So those who are gonna acquire. The most important one also being an upgrade to a solid state transmitter. So which is part of the dual polarization. Dual polarization means that if your radar is scanning just a scan that has got a low resolution, we'll see that this is a kid, this is a child. But then a high resolution scanner will show that there are ears, there's a nose, there are eyes. So dual polarization give those details to the radar. But in addition to that, it also allows an upgrade of a radar to a solid state transmitter. So then if the radar is upgraded to the solid state, it will need less power if you are acquiring a diesel generator, for example. So you won't need a strong generator as you need currently once it has been upgraded to that solid state. And also these transmitters we have now, when you replace them, it's about 2 million each. Sometimes it takes 9 months to come from overseas. But then with this upgrade, it would be much less, it would be plus minus 600 or 700,000 rand and a longer duration. So that means now, if you've got solar energy, even if the power is not strong, but you've got a solid state transmitter, that will be not a problem. So we'll be saving both sides. Thank you very much, honorable members.
If I may come in, thank you so much, CEO, and good morning to the chair, to honorable members and our ministers and the CEOs. I've been asked just to beef up on the services of some of the services that we provide to the farming community. We first give them the 7-day weather forecast. And before the onset of any season, we also provide seasonal forecast. Like now it's going to be winter. We'll then distribute those seasonal forecasts to different farmers. And other services that we also provide to the farmers are the 7-day fire danger index, just informing them of a likelihood of fire activities in their areas. So those are the main 3 services that we provide to the farmers. I've also been asked to beef up on the climate service. Yes, as a way of responding to the likelihoods of climate change and its impact on agriculture as well as drought. The department is with the Department of Environmental and Forestry, together with Science and Technology. They've got a coordinating structure that implement this national climate service, and where they are providing leadership with regard to providing strategic direction and also in assisting with the providing several products. The committee there consists of other key sectors like NDMC, which is National Disaster Management Structure, ARC, Department of Water Affairs, Water Research Council. And what comes out of those interactions is products that are coming from weather service in response to and providing all those sectors. We do come up with the State of the Climate report, which is a report that looks at trends of climate, also at the climate projections. And also, of course, we do provide those seasonal forecasting as part of ensuring that the sector is aware of likelihoods of impact and what response measures they should have. I think those are the 2 questions that are being asked to beef up what the CEO has already mentioned. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Honorable members, follow-ups, Honorable Winkler.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to query, is it possible to access the raw data that the gentleman referred to? If so, where is it published? And if not, do I need to request that specifically? Thank you.
Not
Sorry, I can't hear anything.
Sorry, Chair, I just wanted to hear if there are any other questions. Chair, are you hearing me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, Chair, let me proceed. Honorable Winkler, the data, some of our data is not publicly available data. There are certain data sets that we do make available, and under certain circumstances, and we have a particular policy that talks to that. So not all our data is publicly available. Some of it is proprietary, and we use that for our commercial ventures. It depends on the type of data that you want to access and whether it's publicly available or not. And based on that, we then make a decision on whether to make it available or not. But in some instances, particularly like students and that kind of thing, we do make certain of our data available to promote development in the meteorological space and in the climate change space. I hope that answers your question, ma'am.
You don't have to worry about that, CEO. I can do that on your behalf. Honorable Winkler, your hand is still up.
Yes, Chair. So with specific reference to the air quality monitoring stations and the raw data that, as you said, is most probably processed and then published onto SACCIs, is it possible to get the raw data sets that are coming from those air quality stations, especially in problematic areas, or as I've mentioned, where there are anomalous sort of air pollution events? Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair, I would think so, but I'd ask Mr. Ndabambi to just confirm. But I would think that they would be able to access that kind of data. Mr. Ndabambi?
Yes, thank you, CEO. Yes, the data that is dropped in the South African Air Quality Information System is coming from various service providers from municipalities. So it is available in the information system and as raw data. And then in terms of the accessibility, yes, it's just that I don't have the details now. That data can be made available. So it's actually the data that is being collected, and we encourage all the service providers, the municipalities, the private sector to drop the data in the information system, and they drop it there in that system for free. So maybe, honorable member, then I can also provide a guidance how to access the data in writing to the members. Thank you.
Okay, I suspect we are now finished.
Sorry, Chair, I've got my hand up.
Honorable Winkler.
Sorry, just one more follow up on this. And I'm sorry to drag this out. How does the department ensure that there is no manipulation of raw data by municipalities and other stakeholders that have a vested interest in obviously displaying data that is within the confines of legislation and that does not reflect poorly on them? So how do we ensure that the data we're seeing on the SACCI's website is in fact a true and accurate reflection of the air quality in a specific area? Are there ways, are there balances and checks to ensure that? Or are we just relying on solely on the harvesting of information and publishing on Sakis with no checks and balances? Thank you.
CEO, Mr. Mtavambi.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I think if I recall correctly, there were provisions, but I stand to be corrected in terms of the provision of incorrect information. And I think it carries a penalty. So I need to be checked on that. But ma'am, I think that is the case. If you provide information and it's incorrect information, you run the risk of being basically charged for fraud. I know that in 1 or 2 instances, if I recall correctly, there were indications where a certain entity had not given us all the information. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, ma'am, in that instance, the plant manager was in fact charged criminally for that. So the department would, I think, have their own verification of some of these, and they do it on an ad hoc basis from a compliance perspective. So, you know, if you're willing to take the chance, you could probably give false information, but if you're caught, it would have implications, and the least of which would be a criminal sanction against you.
Honorable Member, Honorable Chair, I think in addition to the compliance and enforcement is the role of the department, and I didn't see any equality aspect in this. Maybe they can give more details, but the department look at all matters that are related to the enforcement. Thank you, members.
Anyone from the department who wants to give additional information?
Chair, good day, Chair. Am I audible?
You are. Good morning. Proceed, Mr. Ramaru.
Yes. No, thank you, Chair. Chair, I think I wouldn't want to add more, but just to ask that on the last question, Chair, we consult internally and provide a written response in terms of the processes and ensuring that the data does not get manipulated. And I will request, Chair, through you, that we consult internally and provide a written response, Chair.
Okay, I just hope we don't run out of those written responses. There are quite many for today. We'll just have to go on hindsight to remind ourselves. We appreciate that, Mr. Amaru.
Thank you, Chair.
Honorable members, that I suspect should bring us to the end of today's meeting. If we are all agreeable, then we can close the meeting.
Yes, thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you, Chair.
No objection, Chair.
Okay, I see the end of CEO, Mr. Isham.
Chair, if I may, I just looked at the Act very quickly in terms of the offences and penalties in terms of the Air Quality Act. And they're saying that a person is guilty of an offence if that person supplies false or misleading information in any application for an atmospheric emission license. If you supply false or misleading information to an air quality officer, you fail to comply with the condition of the Act. And then they also say that a person operating a controlled emitter as a controlled emitter is guilty of an offence if the emissions from that controlled emitter do not comply with the standards under Section 24. And if you've got a listed activity and you're performing that activity, you'd be guilty of an offence if air pollutants at concentrations above the emission limits specified in your license are emitted as a result of that activity. So I would think, Chair, that it would be covered adequately under the offences under Chapter 7 of the Air Quality Act.
Okay. That's fine. Thank you very much, Mr. CEO. I think it clarifies the matter of the penalties and fines and all of that. Honorable members, let me take this opportunity to thank all of you. Thank everyone who participated in today's meeting. We really appreciate it. The people of South Africa have heard what the views of South African weather services are in terms of their APP, together with that of the South African National Biodiversity Institute. With that being said, I hope to see all of you in the Eastern Cape this weekend as we do public consultations on climate change. Thank you very much, and the meeting is closed.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay.